I think he'd probably put Miami 3, like somewhere in the 30s. But it's not going to be a deep ACC. It's going to be Duke and UNC. Duke probably a step ahead, and then a lot of just giant question marks behind them.
But there are some real upside. Like, who knows what Georgia Tech looks like year one with Damon Stoudemire? Does NC State run it back? How different does Syracuse look like for the first time in forever? And we'll get into. I mean, let's mention, like, this is a good transition to Syracuse. Judah Mintz is back, or is committing, and he's back to Syracuse. So when you look at Mintz to the Orangemen and what he brings to this group, how does that change your calculus for what Syracuse looks like next year?
Syracuse actually feels a little underrated to me among the ACC, like by projection systems, and it's not something I anticipated saying really because I didn't like the Syracuse roster 2 months ago. But the more I've thought about it, the more it makes sense. Like, Mintz is a very good player. You got some intriguing role pieces in Malik Brown, Benny Williams, an interesting reclamation project in J.J. Starling, who was awful last season for Notre Dame. 91 offensive rating, 30% from 3. That was a guy who I liked a lot more as a recruit than I did at Notre Dame. And I remember discussing him last summer. So I wonder if a change of scenery, change of offense could do him good. I don't think they're a tournament team, but I think, right now Torvik has them 13th in a 15-team ACC. Could definitely see them finishing top 10, which would be a good step in the right direction. And I think, to be honest, I could see just not like a true dead cat bounce where they're like immediately it's like the new manager bounce in soccer, where it's like they got rid of the old, and just because that's off their back, they're going to be a little better. I do think just like they could have a little bit of like, we don't have to deal with this old guy on the sideline anymore who runs a system we don't like. We can kind of do something new. I think that's going to energize them. And, I mean, they have a lot of talent on their roster that's largely been underdeveloped and hasn't been touched. I mean, a mid-pack ACC finish isn't out of the question for them. I think they're going to be they're a tough team to truly project because they have so many moving pieces. But I like them more than I think most people are giving them credit for.
I think that's fair. And I'm just excited about what Red Autry is going to do with this group, right? Like, then defense is going to be different. I think this is going to be a more intriguing team. And like you said, the ACC, a lot of question marks. And I think Syracuse is a good buy low, bounce back candidate among just a very cluttered group outside of Duke. I think Duke still is probably the only one that you would be like, all right, there's no way this team cannot be really good next year. I think that's the only team in the ACC that you're looking at them in that regard, right?
Yeah. And Syracuse is going to have to play a really interesting style because they lost Jesse Edwards to West Virginia, which kind of seemed to be like pretty purely an NIL move, which is fine. Like, I mean, go get your dollars. But what it's going to do is more or less force them to play pretty small. Their tallest player is Naheem McLeod, who's 7'4" from Florida State. But I don't really rate him that highly. I think he's probably about like their 8th best player. The rest of the roster is 6'8" or shorter. So there's a real chance that they're going to play significant stretches of games, if not the majority of games, with a 6'8" center and 5 guys on the court who are capable of hitting a 3, which is not something we've seen at Syracuse ever. Yeah. So that's going to be something new to watch, which I like.
For sure. Speaking of things that are new that you're going to like watching, the Caleb Love experience is on his way to Arizona. Here's what's interesting to me, and it seems like I was listening to, I think, Field of 68 guys, Goodman and company, when this happened a few weeks ago, where they were pretty ardent about the fact that Caleb Love doesn't make this move if he's not planning on starting. And you look at that Arizona roster, and you're like, and just his play style, and we've talked about it at this very show, it lends itself more to like that J.R. Smith off the bench, like 6-man guy. Like, if he is the third guard, you feel a lot better about Caleb Love. If you're not building your offense around Caleb Love, it feels a lot better. But I push back on that, where I'm like, I think in general, you could say that about certain things, but it's like, I mean, Tennessee, like, you bring in Chris Ledlam and Dalton Connect, and I'm sure both went in to the transfer thinking like, hey, we should be in a good position to start if we're going to make this kind of move for our last year of college eligibility. Like we have NBA draft aspirations, this, that, and the other. It's like Josiah Jordan James came back, and now we'll see who are going to be the most important five, but someone's going to lift out. But like Rick Barnes is going to play the best five and the five that he trusts. Tommy Lloyd, I think at this point has earned a lot of respect. He is obviously in a position of strength at Arizona based on where Arizona is and where they've been the last couple of years. That like, I don't necessarily believe that's true, where it's like, hey, Caleb, you don't have a lot of options right now. You're running out of options. Like, it's either you come here to a better situation, we could use you, but like, we are not guaranteeing you anything. And if it makes the team better by you coming off the bench, that's going to happen. So I think people are getting caught up in whether or not he starts or what that looks like, or he wouldn't make this move unless he thought he's going to be. I'm like, Tommy Lloyd in this group doesn't strike me as the type that would just acquiesce to Caleb Love in that regard, if that's what it came up as. I think that's silly. And if Caleb Love is better as a third guard, great. Then Arizona will do that. If he actually develops and is a better player than what we've seen to this point in UNC, and Tommy Lloyd gets through to him in different ways, that's fine too. But I think people harp on that a little too much, and I think it's a wait and see, and I think Tommy Lloyd deserves the benefit of the doubt on this a little bit. What do you think?
Yeah, I think the best version of Caleb Love is one that's